So originally, I had planned to just share some knowledge about unlocking tiers in a regular update video, but since I know milestone runs such as unlocking tier 16 or whatever tier you're hoping to unlock is an often asked question, I thought I'd specifically share a video with some thoughts as well as my experience of cheesing wave 300 on tier 15 this week. And if you didn't know, reaching wave 300 on tier 15 is a massive progression milestone, especially if you have chain lightning, as it gets you the scatter amp lab, which makes you cut into scatters like warm butter. And it also gets you chain thunder, which helps for survivability, but especially so much later when you have chain lightning plus unlocked. Anyways, so for this video, I'll just first start off with some of the conventional tier unlock milestone tips, and then I'll cover some unique ones connected to my run and experience. And of course, it goes without saying that there may be other cheese strategies not mentioned, and everyone's tower is different, so if you have some other cheese strategies and ideas, then share it in the comments to help the community. But okay, so let's cover the basics. Generally speaking, if you feel like you have enough card slots for it, you should aim to use Demon Mode, Second Wind, and Energy Shield in your short milestone runs to help with survivability. Demon Mode makes you invincible for a set amount of time and increases your damage by 3. Second Wind basically gives you a second life as it revives you with half health and makes you invincible for a few seconds. And Energy Shield helps block some hits, which recharges. So they are all nice and ideally should be used if you have space for it. If you have limited card slots, however, you just gotta consider and try what has the most impact on your milestone runs. Secondly, usually for our tier unlock runs, it is the boss damage that is the main issue, and so there are several ways that we can try to address this. Firstly, the death penalty module can help you insta-kill bosses. It is random what enemies get the death penalty buff, but if you are lucky, the boss will die from a single bullet, so this can be very helpful with milestone unlocks. Secondly, knowing that bosses is what tends to kill us in short tier unlock runs, we have another strategy as well, which is to try to avoid them. And the way we do that is by using the wave skip card. But generally speaking, you don't want to use the card all the time, as you likely will want to heal up or gain more death wave health multiplier in between bosses. So what you do is just to equip the wave skip card just before the boss wave, and then immediately after swapping back to whatever card you were using. The wave skip won't happen every time of course, but getting a lucky wave skip or two can be the difference between reaching a target wave or not. And the third general advice is to turn off the enemy balance card to reduce the amount of enemies you're facing. However, please note that in some circumstances, using the enemy balance card may actually be a lot better, and this is largely because it will help you earn more coins, gives you more enemies to earn higher death wave health multiplier, and so on. And especially so if you have a permanent black hole, as then no enemies will anyways hit you except for elites and bosses. And fourth, if relevant, you can consider squeezing in a Death Defy substat on your armor module to increase your Death Defy luck. But that means you're taking a spot from something else you may use as a substat, so you have to consider that trade-off. Personally, I don't use any Death Defy substat, but it is anyways always nice to have a backup armor module with a Death Defy for the annoying Death Defy event mission. So yeah, maybe at least have one module available with it for that, if nothing else. Okay, so I think that covers the main general advice, but next I want to give a lot more other suggestions with some specific examples for my tier 15 wave 300 cheese strategy run. And as for me, having essentially an econ and health build and being very weak as I've just played for 5 months, actually it was 5 months on the day yesterday since I first started out. Anyways, my build was not ready by any means to cruise through tier 15 wave 300. And by the way, so I'll ramble a bit next in terms of what I've done and so forth, but if you just want to jump ahead to a summary, then just jump to this timestamp showed on the screen for a full summary. But so yeah, I was not really ready to unlock tier 16 at all, but I was really impatient to get it done and determined to make it work with what I had, which was not much. Among others, I had a legendary death penalty, a mythic wormhole redirector with horrible substats where I kept being unable to roll any decent region substat, many undeveloped labs, and with 15 card slots available, and so on. So first of all, it is the bosses and elites that is the real difficulty with tier 15. But also, if you don't have a permanent black hole, then normal enemies becomes a challenge too. And since I didn't have a permanent black hole, it meant I had to figure out a strategy that would address both sides, including bosses that would virtually one-shot me. And first of all, since I run Orb Devo for farming, any difficult short tier unlock milestone requires me to undevo, meaning that I have to temporarily change to Blender so that I start to run with free upgrades and maxed workshop, etc. And I did that and thought I did a decent first run, but only got to wave 100 or so, which was a big reality check. But I also liked the challenge, which was quite different from normally having to just reach wave 100 for a new tier unlock. Reaching wave 300 was going to require a lot more tinkering. And at first, I ran the basic strategies already covered in this video, wave skip for bosses, death penalty module, and so forth. But beyond that, these were some of the additional tweaks. First of all, as I needed all the health I could get, and for reference, my health lab is level 40 and my death wave health is level 16, which is not that much, but so I needed to employ strategies that would increase my health. And the first part is something that I would often do, and that is to turn off all kinds of damage in the beginning of the run, to help death wave tag more enemies for the death wave health multiplier. So I would turn off chain lightning and spotlight missiles, turn off any damage card, and turn off the extra orbs card. That way I could squeeze in more health multiplier. Then once I started to struggle with two large black hole shotguns hitting me, I would introduce the damage ultimate weapons and the damage cards back. And by the way, another thing related to health is that I would recommend you choose the health perk as your first choice for the tier 15 wave 300 challenge. There's nothing else that really compares to it in my opinion, but of course your situation might be different, where maybe a longer black hole duration to get it permanent would help more, but for me, I would have no chance whatsoever if I didn't have more health. And also, you may have similar results with the 50-50 damage trade-off card, but that one is purple, so you cannot choose it as a first perk at least. But if you want to try to get that in the run, then just ban as many common perks as you can to increase your chances. And since this unlock run consists of 300 waves, I also needed to squeeze in as much cash and free upgrades as possible. So when relevant, I would keep the cash and free up cards on and only take them out when I had to, and which I'll talk more about in a second. And because bosses hit me so hard, I needed the ability to heal up between the bosses. So even though my wormhole redirector has crappy substats for region, it was the only effective module for this run. My much stronger ACP is useless as I'm not remotely close to be able to do any meaningful damage to the bosses or elites. And also, because you want to heal up between the boss waves, this is also why you don't want to wave skip on normal waves, as you want to get as many recovery packages as possible and to give your wormhole redirector more time. And all these strategies took me further, but not nearly far enough. I had to cheese a lot more to get it. And one of these was to apply the same strategy that helps squeeze out a few more waves at the end of a tournament to slow down the game speed. Basically, as I was trying to amass as much death wave health multiplier as possible, I could do this and deal with the black hole shotguns for a lot longer if I reduced my game speed to 2 to 3x. But I had a massive problem though, which was that eventually the shotguns would kill me, and I had no way to deal with that directly as I don't have a long enough black hole duration and I don't have an ancestral galaxy compressor. Which brings me to a cheese strategy that is very module dependent, but still a very significant one. As I had just gotten Multiverse Nexus to ancestral, though I had horrible substats on it, I could now achieve permanent black hole in run by turning off Death Wave and Golden Tower, because then the sync cooldown for black hole would be 50 minus 10 seconds, so 40 seconds, which would barely make me able to get a permanent black hole with my Mythic Galaxy compressor. And so this is a neat strategy that ultimately netted me very long runs on tier 13 and 14, but for tier 15, just doing this by itself would not be enough to reach wave 300. With a permanent black hole though, now only elites and bosses were gonna be a challenge, so it would prove easy to get to wave 200 plus every run, but not to reach wave 300. And a key reason is that with the death wave turned off, I would no longer earn any health multiplier, and with Golden Tower turned off, my cash income suffered massively. And the in-run cash income was extremely bad because I also did not use the enemy balance card. And so I tried using the enemy balance card instead, but that just made me struggle earlier in the run where I would need to turn off the death wave multiplier and Golden Tower earlier, so this wasn't really helpful either. So then I had to address all of that and go a bit more extreme. If I don't have enough cash to max my health and region stats in the run, how could I make this a lot easier? Well, respecking. I respect with the intention of making a build that would only be for this milestone run. In other words, once I would be done with this challenge, I would need to respec again to get back to my proper orb dev or farm build, but as I was determined to complete this challenge, the 300 gems wasted on respec was going to be absolutely worth it for me to get the scatter amp lab, which will help my farm and tournament run significantly in the future. But okay, so what did this respec build entail? Well, As I could redistribute my workshop coins, it basically meant completely ignoring coins and cells enhancements, which costs a lot. And it also included reducing the levels of my workshop enemy level skips. That way, I could pump up my health, regen and damage to more than 5,700 so that I could max this easy in the run itself. And importantly, I could also increase my effective health by upgrading the recovery package enhancements. And while wall is quite useless for the tier 15 run, it still gives a bit of a buffer between you and the bosses when it's up. And so I also got the wall massively stronger by unlocking the wall enhancements and just overall a bit more in the defense enhancements. Then, I finally had all the pieces in place, or so I thought, until I was unlucky and faced a ton of elites in my run. However, on the second attempt, I got it done. Unfortunately, I don't have a proper recording of the final waves itself, as I was casually doing it on the phone before going to bed, but let me just summarize the various strategies I've covered so that they're easier to recall and test for you where relevant in your own tier unlock milestone attempts. I followed the general basics in cheesing tier unlocks, such as using demon mode, second wind, energy shield, as well as using death penalty and wave skipping bosses. And I did the final run without the enemy balance card. The start of my runs were all about turning off damage cards and damage ultimate weapons and my orb card, and tried to get as high death wave multiplier as possible and just gradually add these things back. And that gave me available card slots to run cash and free upgrades in the beginning. And in terms of my cash, I was primarily focused on maxing my health and just quickly gold boxing the cheap stuff so that the free upgrades would go to the more relevant workshop abilities. And once I started to struggle getting more death wave health, even by adding damage cards and turning on my ultimate weapons, I then slowed the game down to better deal with the black hole shotguns for a while longer. Then, once impossible to survive the black hole shotguns, I turned off my golden tower and my death wave so that I now gained permanent black hole. With permanent black hole, damage would no longer really matter, so I was able to put my cash and free up card back in. I picked a health perk at wave 195. The first 200 waves or so, I didn't really bother skipping bosses, but from about 200 upwards, I attempted to skip all the bosses, so every 8th wave. I had target priority on elites to be ready to damage and knock these backwards as much as possible, and I ensured that I had the landman stun card on. When an elite appeared on screen, I would change my cards to full damage cards, including ultimate crit. Vampires were generally quite easy to deal with because of my garlic thorns. Rays were a big challenge, but now I finally had enough health to properly outlast them so that they died to thorns. And to deal with the pesky scatters, the strategy was to essentially let it kill me and trigger the second wind, which I knew would split it up into smaller pieces, and only then use demon mode to take care of the rest once it was fully close to my tower and broken up in pieces. If I had only activated demon mode on the first big scatter piece, I wouldn't have killed it, and it would have just lingered around my tower until it could kill me after demon mode would run out. And luckily for me, it was fine to waste both card abilities on scatter, as I had enough health otherwise to tank the bosses if I properly regenerated and got enough packages, etc. And to fully squeeze out a tiny bit more health, I turned on Death Wave for a handful cycles late in the run, as the black hole had accumulated a backlog of cycles. However, this was super risky though, as the backlog of black holes were not that many, and the moment I would lose permanent black hole, I would die immediately. And there is no counter that tells you how much of a backlog you got. But every run I did this, and it added about 0.3x extra health. And although I was tanky enough to tank the final boss at wave 296, it funnily enough got the death penalty buff and died to a single bullet, which was a funny way to end things. And so yeah, that's basically how I went about cheesing my way through tier 15, and thereafter I basically applied the same strategy to tier 16 just to quickly reach wave 60 there for the chain lightning labs I desperately wanted. I do realize though that a part of my strategy requires quite specific circumstance. In my case, to have an ancestral multiverse nexus to help you get permanent black hole, but I'm sure a lot of the other tips and strategies could be helpful to you as well in increasing your maximum tier. And again, if you have any other cheese strategies to share it with us in the comments. And just very lastly, I wanted to take the chance to just say thank you for all the kind and supportive words shared in my Orb Devo video guide. That's really appreciated, and I'm so glad so many liked it. And it's so cool hearing stories from you guys about how it helped you double your coin gain and so on. So yeah, Thank you for that. That certainly also motivates to make more content. And very last, I just wanted to mention that I am heading on a month-long vacation where I most likely would not be able to make any videos. I'll still continue to play, and I will share various insights and updates in community posts on the channel, and I'll answer questions and comments when I can, but there likely won't be any update video or guides until January sometime. So yeah, just so you know that I haven't vanished if you don't see a new video in a while. Okay, that's all. Thanks everyone. Hope this video helps you unlock new tiers for yourself. Bye.